Welcome to the 80-20 Baseball Podcast. Strike! The 80-20 Coaching Masterclass, our weekly get-together where coaches go from new to good and good to great. Mastering the fundamentals and the art of coaching.
Welcome all you great coaches, players, parents. Welcome to this week's get-together. Our focus here, of course, is better baseball, a better youth baseball experience, better skill development, better team cultures, more fun. Speaking of which, in this episode, I have a wonderful interview to bring all of you, somebody that I'm sure a good amount of you are familiar with, and we are going to talk hitting, specifically hitting, which is perfect because we just completed our 5 phases of hitting series. So we'll get into that interview in just a moment. That will take up the bulk of this episode. But there are a few things I want to talk about in addition to that interview. So Manny Machado made some stellar plays in the World Baseball Classic the other day. Almost 2 duplicate plays, backhand plays. He's a third baseman, of course, going toward the line, going into foul territory, backhanding some well-hit ground balls, and throwing it back across the diamond, making 2 amazing plays. Now, something that stood out, and you can go see these plays on X or YouTube, 2 things that really stood out, and I watched both plays in slow motion about 10 times each, just to look closely at what he was doing. Of course, he's a big guy. He's got a big frame, a strong frame. He's super talented, super athletic. But to do that play, it's not all athleticism. There has to be technique that he's using that allows him to do that play as well as anybody in the entire world. The backhand play at third base to throw it all the way across the diamond to first base. First base is 127 feet and some change from third base. He's throwing that ball from further than that. These throws are probably near 140 feet in distance. He's making these 140-foot throws with his momentum going away from first base. And he's throwing out base runners who are running down the line in just a little bit over 4 seconds. So what I saw that stood out, and I'd love for you all to go watch this, and I'm going to start breaking down more of these plays and putting them on the website and posting them on X and Instagram. I got a 75-inch touchscreen that I'll break these down on. It's the same 75-inch touchscreen that I used to build out much of the coaching plan. Really makes it nice to break down all these plays in 4K on a big screen that I can draw on. That said, 2 things that really stood out that we can take from Manny Machado's technique throwing back across his body, across the field. Let's put aside his freak athleticism and his elite talent. He does 2 things that I thought really stood out. One, as soon as he gets the ball, he works hard to get some momentum going toward home plate. He knows he can't stop. He knows he doesn't have the time to field the ball, put on the brakes, and then shuffle back toward first base. He's going away from first base as he's fielding these balls. So he knows he doesn't have time to get momentum to first base or toward first base. What he does is, as he's fielding it, he starts to lean forward toward home plate, almost toward that third base dugout. This is an efficient way to slow down his momentum away from first base. So he's kind of hedging it a little bit, his negative momentum. So I thought that really was interesting. He's fielding it, and you'll see his footwork really quickly take a couple steps in. Now, these are real subtle, but it's enough that then he can create a low 3/4 arm slot. He does a low 3/4 arm slot. He doesn't try to bring it up over his head. And the second thing that I think really stood out is when he does throw back across his body, his front side, that glove, that front arm. So in his case, the left arm, which is pretty typical for all third basemen, most all of them are right-handed, that left arm, that left hand, that glove stays firm against his chest. He knows he can't pull and fly open with that glove and have anything on the ball and make an accurate throw. So as he turns, he really keeps that glove firm against his body. So those 2 things really stood out. So third baseman, they're fielding a ball toward the foul line. Do whatever you can to minimize that negative momentum and create neutral momentum toward the third base dugout a little bit, which will create a better angle for the arm. It minimizes the body working against the arm, going in two completely different directions. And then that front side, that glove side, holding it firm against the chest as he makes the throw. Now, this is a play. If you want your third baseman to make this play, they need to rep it. Very often when I watch ground ball drills, the ground balls are very similar. They're regular routine ground balls. Worst case, you can get closer and throw these backhand throws. Although, if you're going to do that, do not make the mistake that I see 99% of coaches make. Do not just throw every single one to the backhand. Keep them honest like a game. They'll just start cheating that way. They're not going to cheat that way in a game. In a game, they don't know where the ball is going. They don't even know if it's coming to them. So many drills are built like this, and that's why the 80-20 baseball coaching plan is built the way it's built. So you don't fall into this trap of just throwing backhand, 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 backhand. Well, if I'm a player, I've already got my feet moving to the backhand. It makes it so much easier. But in a game, half the battle is getting a good first step. And if I already know my first step's going to be to my right side, if I'm a third baseman on a backhand, that really reduces the difficulty and takes away a big part of the game-like nature of that. So, Manny Machado, footwork and glove work on those throws. Not the glove work fielding the ball, but the glove work and the positioning of the glove and the non-throwing hand as he's throwing. Good stuff. Now, one more thing before we dive into the interview. Last week, of course, we finished up the 5 phases of hitting. Keep in mind, each phase should be coached separately. Don't coach them all at once. Be careful not to coach 2 phases at the same time. It is strongly discouraged. Start with phase 1 and progress through each phase. Over the course of the season, if your players are more advanced, okay, you can move through it a little faster. Or if it's your own kid and you're working consistently with them, maybe outside of practice, then you could adjust accordingly, move faster through those phases. But get them to perfect phase 1 and work through the 5 phases. Today, we're going to talk a lot about phase 3 and phase 5 in the interview, the load and the swing. So it's a great complement to what we've been discussing. And last week we touched on Tony Gwynn and some other great hitters. I was watching some old footage a couple days ago of Tony Gwynn, and I'll tell you what, his 2-strike approach is probably the best 2-strike approach of any hitter in my lifetime, and I'm 45. So over the last 45 years, Tony Gwynn, best 2-strike approach. But with less than 2 strikes, I would look for other places for better examples to borrow from. But with 2 strikes, Tony Gwynn is the first hitter I would analyze and see what he's doing. Really look at how he's approaching each pitch, what his plan is, his swing, his approach with 2 strikes. But with less than 2 strikes, so that's something I wanted to wrap up from our 5 phases of hitting series before we dive into some more hitting, a really good hitting discussion today. And this interview is with Coach Josh Cathcart. Josh, if you see him on Instagram, he's Hitting Done Right. On YouTube, Hitting Done Right. I'm sure some of you listening right now are familiar with Coach Cathcart, Josh, and his Hitting Done Right Instagram and YouTube. He's very popular on those. He does TikTok too, although I can't speak too much to that. He does online hitting analysis, so remote hitting analysis for players. Over the years, I talk with a lot of coaches or I listen to a lot of interviews, podcasts, and I go, that person's super interesting, but not always somebody I'm going, man, I'd like to have a coffee or a beer with that guy. With Josh, feel like he wasn't all the way over in Texas. I'd be popping in, saying what's up to Josh, popping into his facility and chatting it up with him. Maybe it's that Texas accent. I don't know. I love me a Southern accent, Texas accent. I love the Australian accent. I know we got some Australian listeners. I love an Australian accent. Crocodile Dundee, one of my favorites. Number 1 and number 2, good sequel. Hopefully we got some Mick Dundee fans in the audience. So speaking of sweet accents, we're going to get to Coach Josh here. We'll start the interview. He'll give his backstory and what he's doing right now. Then he's going to talk about the load. He's got some really good stuff to share. I'm going to put the video of this podcast up on the website here this week so you can see some of the stuff he's demonstrating. So Coach Josh Cathcart with Hitting Done Right, his website, hittingdoneright.com. All right, let's dive into the interview. All right, listeners, I am here with Josh Cathcart. I'm pumped to be here with Josh today. Josh, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, my man. Thanks for having me.
Well, I appreciate you coming on because I know you got a lot of wisdom to share, and we've been talking about hitting a little bit more, and I'm just excited to bring on somebody like you who specializes in hitting. With that said, I'd love for you to share with the listeners, your backstory and what's kind of led you to where you're at now as a coach and what you are doing right now.
So, baseball has been part of my life forever. My dad was a big time ball player in college, had an opportunity to get drafted, but got hurt. My mom played what would be considered serious softball before softball was super serious like it is now. So, I was raised around the game. After I got out of college, I have a degree in sports management. And so I was going into kind of the more business side of things and was just hating life. And my high school baseball coach called me up. He said, "Hey, man, I heard you were back in town. I need a freshman baseball coach. Are you interested?" And I said, "Yes," to answer your question, but I don't have a teaching certificate. So he said, "Well, you got a degree from A&M. You're not dumb. We'll figure that out. I'll get you in with a job and we'll get you coaching." And I said, "Okay." Long story short, I was a sixth grade in school suspension aide and a high school baseball coach starting out. That was my first job. And then I ended up getting my alternative certification and I did elementary PE, which that has led into kind of my style now coaching the young kids. When you've got a gym full of 60 kindergarten and first graders and you got to teach them to jump rope and play kickball and do all these different things, push-ups, sit-ups, you learn some different methods. So I did high school baseball. I progressed up. I ended up being the varsity hitting coach and middle infield defensive coach for a team that won the Texas 5A state championship in 2011. So I had done freshman by myself, JV by myself, and then finally got promoted up to the varsity staff and did that. Well, in 2012, so we won the championship. And then in 2012, me and my wife at the time had our daughter. And she was a teacher also. And we started looking at the finances and how much I had made even through the state championship year. I mean, that's as much as we could possibly do. And both of us were like, "No, that's not going to work. Let's start looking for something else." The first thought was for me and her to open our own place. She was a gymnast cheerleader growing up. And so we were going to look at a place and I was going to do half baseball and she was going to do half gymnastics and cheer. So I started going around looking at buildings and talking to people that own places like that and quickly realized I wanted no part of that type of business ownership. The facility ownership is a crazy, crazy business. And one of the people that I talked to was the owner at Hardball Academy, which is where I work now, where I do my lessons now. And I was just asking him questions, blah, blah, blah. Well, he basically offered me a job on the spot. I said, "Let me talk to my wife. Sounds good, but I want to run teams." At that point, I was still young. I was still energetic. I wanted to be on the field developing teams. Started the team program there, was up to one point running 8 teams through hardball, coaching 2 myself. Did that until 2020 when COVID hit is when I stopped doing the teams. 2018 is when I started my first online hitting business or baseball business. It was called Baseball Doctor. Me and my business partner at the time, she was an ex-college softball player. I didn't have any idea what Instagram was. I actually coached her brother. She just came up one day and was like, "Hey, the way you do these drills and the way you run practices and stuff, you should put this online." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And she's like, "On Instagram." And I was like, "What the hell is Instagram?" Like I had Facebook and MySpace. And she showed me. We built Baseball Doctor in 2022. We went our separate ways, and that's when I started Hitting Done Right. And so now Hitting Done Right is my brand. I have it on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook. I run clinics around the country. I have online services where people can send in videos of their players, and I do it's generally between 10 and 12-minute breakdowns where I have their video with videos of pros that I can voice over and draw on and do all that. And then based on those analysis, I give them customized practice plans. Those customized practice plans are built off of videos from my YouTube channel so that they can always revert back, go to the drills, ask questions, send me video, do that kind of stuff. So yeah, man, I've kind of got about 120 hours of in-person lessons a month. I'm generally traveling 2 to 3 weekends a month for clinics or for individual clients around the country. And yeah, it's just, in 2012, coming off of being a high school baseball coach, I would have never thought I was going to be a 2-time online hitting business owner. It's been wild. It's crazy at times. The internet is full of interesting people, to say the least. But yeah, I love it. I love hitting. I love baseball. I love softball in general. So I get to do things like this, which is awesome. It's been good, man.
Oh, I appreciate you sharing that backstory and really cool. And I think one takeaway, and I do want to dive into some hitting. You were an elementary PE teacher, and I've worked in PE for, I taught my first PE class 23 years ago as an elementary special ed PE class, which was like super challenging, especially as somebody who was really as green as I was 23, 24 years
Yeah.
ago. I think that there's a lot of value in being a teacher, especially a PE teacher, because you have so many more kids. First off, you have a lot of kids that aren't interested in doing any of this activity or exercise or sports. You have to really hone your coaching craft, because when you get out to the baseball field, you got most of the kids want to be there. They're having fun. They're playing their sport. Well, PE is most of the kids don't want to be there, or a lot of the kids don't want to be there, especially as you get older, middle school, high school, and you're not really doing the things they want to do because you have to cover this curriculum. So I like how you tied that in. Now, for hitting, I know you
Hmm.
cover all areas of hitting, but there was a few that stood out that I'd love for you to hit on.
Okay.
First off, loads. You said something about different loads for different hitters. Maybe you could share out what you mean by that.
I think that in the online world these days, people see videos that get pushed out by algorithms. And so they're seeing basically two types of methods and everything, just with working with different hitters. Everybody has to get into their back hip. I think that that is pretty common knowledge if you're paying any attention whatsoever. But with the internet, I think that a lot of people are thinking, oh, I have to go to this Aaron Judge hover load, or I have to go to basically this low crouched no stride. And there's actually everything in between that. So I think when people see things that are a little different, they're like, oh, that has to be wrong. So one of the things that I try to do with my hitters in person and online is look at what they're naturally doing. And one of the easiest ways to do that is to start them with their feet together, just bat on shoulder, feet together, and say, step and swing. And you'll see some that are going to hang back a little bit before. You're going to see some that want to bounce first. They want to go down first. And then you'll see some that just want to stride. And once you see that, you're like, okay, so this is your preference. Now let's work off of that. If you're kind of a hang back and step out, you're probably going to be more of the Aaron Judge, like hover, coil. If the first move is kind of, I want to get down into my legs, kind of crouch a little bit, then okay, let's set you down and figure out how to minimize the bouncing, but let's start you low. If you're just kind of a fall forward, let gravity take me, I'm going to use momentum. Okay, you kind of got some King Griffey Jr. type tendencies. Let's teach you how to control that forward move. And then there's big mistakes that I see all the time. And the one of them, and I think we're going to talk about it, is the spring load, where, I mean, it's literally like they're creating a spring in their back leg. They're starting from a neutral position, they're going down and back, and then they pop back up out of it because that's what their body's getting set to do. One of the easiest ways that I can explain, and I try to when I have my camps, when I have a big group of kids talking about the load, is think about your hips like the lid of a jar. So if I have this jar like this, and I have the lid sitting on top, my load is to tighten that lid, and then my swing is to untighten it as quickly as I can with my hip and core rotation instead of bouncing and then trying to get into it. I had a kid yesterday and I said, think about what the swing is, okay? Any swing, the golf swing, the tennis swing, the cricket swing, the hockey swing, all of that is a core rotational move. The swing is a rotational move. And if we're not preparing our body to rotate, then you're doing something wrong. When you are in the weight room and you're doing a squat, are you getting ready to turn? Or are you getting ready to go back up? And he goes, that makes sense. And I'm like, yeah, we gotta get our body ready to do the rotational move. We're not trying to bounce. And so getting loaded, obviously it's the first step in the swing process. And so if the load is wrong, you're never going to have the consistency. You're never going to have the swing that you want. I tell people in my camps when I'm talking to a big group, Loading wrong is like starting a word with the wrong letter. The word's never going to be right if you start it with the wrong letter. And the swing is never going to be right if you don't have a consistent, proper, and on time load. And so it's extremely important. The spring load is one of the ones that I see the most in young kids because they're trying to feel strong. Or someone has said, get into your legs, and they haven't explained it properly. And so a kid's like, okay, I'm going to get into my legs. I'm going to squat down and get into my legs. When in reality, we should be telling them, or they should be taught to get into that hip properly. And so you feel like you're in control of your body.
When you have these hitters, or when you see hitters that come to you that might have misinterpreted what other coaches were trying to teach them, what's something, or what are some things you do to make sure that your message is clear? Because this is challenging stuff. It's a lot of physiology, the kinematic sequencing. But for kids, when we're working with that 10-year-old, what are some things you do to really get them to digest it and take it in and be able to apply it faster?
I always go back, and this comes from the elementary PE background and trying to communicate things to a large group. Common sense. I try to show them the common sense. The first one is always, I've been told to take my knob to the ball or my hands to the ball. Okay, well, let's look at this and think about this. So if I'm standing here and I take my hands to the ball or knob to the ball, does that make any sense? And without fault, they're like, oh, no, that doesn't look right. Okay. So if I'm here and let's say the ball's on the outside corner and I go this way, my knob is now pointed at the ball, but doesn't this look better? And they, oh, yeah, inside corner. Okay. And so that's usually the first one. And so it's just showing them, I understand as a young player, you are trying to make your coach happy. You're trying to make mom or dad happy. Okay. You're doing exactly what the words are telling you to do. Take your hands to the ball. Yes, sir. But that's not what's really happening. And so, unless you have somebody to explain, hey, the first thing to happen, and without getting into all the details of the kinematic sequence and everything, I say, hands are the last thing. They're at the top of the body. Our body is a tornado. It's working from the bottom all the way to the top, and the hands are last. So if we know that the hands are last, we have to start rotating. And then once you get them to understand that, it's like, okay, turn the knob to the ball. Don't throw it or push it or whatever else. And then you have, without fault, you have people, well, Mike Trout said on ESPN to take your hands to the ball. You're right. He did, and he shows this. And then I have to explain Mike Trout, Alex Rodriguez, Tony Gwynn, Miguel Cabrera, some of the best hitters to ever walk the planet will show and demonstrate this, but it's because they don't have to worry about the body. Their body's going to do what it's supposed to do. They're thinking this because they're trying to get on top of a 100 miles an hour fastball. You, Mr. 8-year-old, don't have any idea what your body's doing. We need to learn the body first, and then we can put in the hand thoughts. And I probably say that 100 times a day. Hey, you're a young player. Forget about your hands right now. Learn to use your body. Once you learn to use your body, then if we need to think about what your hands are doing later for velocity or for adjustments or whatever the case is, we can get there. So that's my biggest thing with those cues, is just show them. I understand why you are doing what you're doing. You're trying to do exactly what you're told, but let's back up and see if we really understand it. Squish the bug is another one. As soon as you stand there and you show them that I can turn my back foot without my hips doing anything, they're like, oh, that doesn't look right. And as soon as you put your hips into it and make it look like a real swing, they go, oh, okay. My back foot is going to react to what my hips and knees are doing. It's not just sitting there spinning itself. Another one that's really common is pulling off. Oh, my mom says I'm pulling off. My dad says I'm pulling off. My coach says I'm pulling off. And then they don't want to rotate because they think, okay, if I rotate, I'm pulling off. When in reality, pulling off has nothing to do with rotation. It has to do with losing posture. And so, again, I explain, okay, if I'm down this way and I stand up, that's pulling off, but that's coming out of posture. If I can stay here and turn, I can still turn, but now everything's going to the middle of the field. It's a posture control thing. It's not a rotation thing. And again, usually you see the light bulbs come on and they at least understand now the difference in how their body moves. And then we dive into, okay, these are the drills to help and, do all that jazz.
That's good stuff right there. And I love how you reverse engineer it a little bit for the kid, but you also don't just say, hey, that's wrong. You come from a point of view or an angle of like, let's show you. So you, as the player, as the kid, can see it and decide for yourself. And instead of saying, hey, your old coach is wrong or that's not right, you explain it and you show them. And so they get that buy in rather than being told what to think. They can see it for themselves. And I like how you approach that. Mike Trout's and the Tony Gwynn's and they're great hitters, right? Sometimes I think when they do teach or tell things verbally, it's not always what they're doing in the game too. And also sometimes they're players, they're not coaches. It's a long journey to become a good coach. Communication is something that takes a lot of time to get, like you communicated that so well, but you've been doing this for thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of hours. So I think as players, sometimes they say something and maybe they're not articulating it perfectly. And so young kids hear it and think, oh, knob to the ball.
It's also cherry picked. Stuff online like that is cherry picked. It's picked for buzzwords and everything else. Full conversations generally aren't recorded, so you don't have any context. But if I'm a 10-year-old kid and my favorite player is Mike Trout and he says, do this, hell, I'm going in the backyard right now and I'm doing this. And so that's the big problem. So that's one of the things that I also tell, especially the older kids, like 12, 13, that have access to social media. Before you go and just start doing something that you saw, ask. If you're one of my kids, ask me. I may say, yeah, dude, that's great for you. Or I may say, whoa, 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 time out. We're not going to do that without understanding whatever it may be. And to your point, there's a reason I think that you don't see some of the best hitters to ever walk the planet hired as hitting coaches. Is the information good? Do I always listen when a Barry Bonds clip or a Tony Gwynn or a Ted Williams clip? Absolutely. Like, hold up, what do they got to say right now? But if you look over history, the actual names of hitting coaches that are brought up in the circles of us that kind of live this aren't ex-players that were multi-time all-stars. They're guys that have just been studying and studying and studying and always learning and developing and things.
Yeah, and we got to keep that in mind and keep that context in mind. You mentioned something about, in one of your videos, recent videos, you talked about create and maintain space. What do you mean by create and maintain space?
There's a couple places that we have to do this in our body and in our swing. I like the fact that I can get up and demo. This makes my heart happy. The first one that I think everybody, again, who watches is the stride and separate. When we're creating that space between our front foot and our hands, some people call it the rubber band effect, like we're stretching a rubber band across our body. That's the first one. That creates the stretch across our core, our fascial slings, all that fun stuff. But that space that we create is our time for adjustment also. Let's say we have a kid that comes in and they don't ever get their hands back, so they land and they're like this. Well, now their space is like this compared to this. And so that kid's not going to have nearly the adjustability. Same thing with kids that short stride. I know y'all can't see my feet, but if I take a stride and I'm just outside of my shoulders, my swing space is tiny. Where if I get to a good launch position, and for reference, I always use bat length. Unless a kid's like 6'2" or bigger, the length of their bat is generally really close to how wide their base should be when their front foot hits the ground. So we have the space that we create with our stride. Then you also have the space between your body and your arms that we have as we come through to allow us adjustability through the zone, and then space here when we get into posture that allows the barrel to come. Because if I get right here and I stand up and I lose all that, now the swing's going to be coming across my body instead of having space and being able to work to the middle of the field. So space in the stretch, a little bit of space between the chest and the arms, and then underneath when I'm down in posture. maintaining those areas through the swing is crucial for adjustment, bat path. So yeah, I do. That's why people have the connection balls. That's why people use the bands. That's why some instructors, you'll see them have like the bat between their feet so they can't slide up, because that happens a lot. Kids will go to swing and that back foot will slide up on them. And so everything stands up. And I tell them it's like crushing a can, aluminum can like this, and then all of a sudden you slide up. It's like, nope, when we just crush everything and you have nowhere to go. So yeah, creating and maintaining space is it's vital.
So keep that spacing. Along those lines are kind of something that kind of comes right along with that. You say down to get behind, down to get behind. What do you mean by that?
So the baseball is always going to be, unless you're swinging at something that is up here, the ball that we are targeting is always going to be down from where our hands are. So when I get, I'm in my stance, load, get here. The first move is always going to be slightly down. I've got to come down to get connected. I'm not going to be swinging up here. And so with our sequence, the initial knob direction is always going to be down. And that's also why you get the swing down, because the first move pitches underneath me somewhere. I have to get the barrel behind the ball and on plane. So down, and then as I turn, now I get that barrel behind. Instead of coming up and taking that knob up first, which is taught by some people, I'm a believer that the first move with sequence is always going to be slightly initially down as we get connected. And then depending on pitch height, I may be slightly down and then flat, but I'm still initially down a little bit. I may be really down if it's a real low pitch. One of the easiest cues that I have developed over time and tell people is replace the front elbow with the knob. If you start watching a lot of video, you'll see that a whole lot. So from that launch position, if I can just think about bringing my knob to where my front elbow was, that's going to get me into a really good position. If it's a down pitch and I've got to come here, it may switch a little bit. If I'm getting into like that low, change up slider running away, as a general rule, and a really good thought for young hitters, is replace the front elbow with the knob. Like, the ball is going to be, generally, the ones we want to swing at are generally going to be belly button to knee. Well, that's obviously lower than my shoulder where my hands start. How do you get there? Well, you got to go down. But again, it's in sequence and there's some nuance to that. But as an easy thought process, down to get behind. And when I draw it out on my analysis and explain it, it really clicks for people. I would just tell people, if they really want the breakdowns of this type of stuff, go to my YouTube. My Instagram and everything, they may be like a minute long. My YouTubes have full lessons, like full, if you want a topic on rear arm connection, posture control, maintaining space, they're called lesson look-ins. And it's a full me in the lesson, how I teach that to kids. And the YouTube channel videos are designed for young players, parents, and coaches. It's super, super easy terminology. It's one or two drills. It's not a bunch of biomechanical jargon and stuff. So it's designed to literally be able to put it in front of your 9-year-old and say, copy that. So if people are really wanting the more mechanical, technical breakdowns with the drills, YouTube's where to go. If you want to see just kind of real quick me in the cage with somebody and kind of a vibe, then Instagram and TikTok. If you want to see me really sarcastic, giving people a whole lot of, grief online, Facebook is kind of my playground for that. So each platform has a different kind of vibe to it.
Yeah, and when I was watching those videos, immediately I thought Josh is perfect for our listeners. When I was watching, I go, this is exactly what we need. We cover so much stuff on our podcast, but one thing that's hard to do is to talk hitting and the specific nuances of each kid's swing. And I thought, I'm going to bring Josh on, not just to have you share out your message, but also to get listeners to go and look at and watch your YouTube videos or Instagram, like you said, but really go and then use those to coach up each kid or each player's individual swings. So speaking of swings, launch angle is something that gets talked a lot about these days. What's your take on launch angle, and what can youth coaches, how should they use launch angle, or should they use it when they're talking to their players and coaching them?
I don't ever talk in terms of launch angle. I'm a firm believer in hit line drives all over the yard and good things are going to happen. But with technology and everything these days, it's there, it's in front of you. So, my advice to younger coaches that aren't dealing with, there are some, like if you get into college and you have a kid that he doesn't have the speed tool or anything, and you need him to hit the ball out of the yard, if you want to work on creating a higher launch angle for him, I get it. That's what he needs to do. For young players learning, what I say is stay between 10 and 22. That's what I look for. So we have a TrackMan at the facility, and I tell our players, I say, you can turn around and look at that thing all you want. I know it's cool, but the number I'm looking at is the launch angle between 10 and 22. Because if you can start doing that with line drives on 40 mile an hour front toss or a 90 mile an hour machine, you're going to be okay. So that's my thought on launch angle. Like I say, I don't ever talk in terms of creating it. If I do have a kid that's a ground ball machine, we talk about getting on plane. I don't say, hey, we're going to fix your launch angle. If I have a kid that's a fly ball machine, I'll say, hey, we're going to work on flatten you out, finding the middle of the baseball. I'm not talking about, hey, we're going to lessen your launch angle. It's one of those things. Launch angle in their mind, in young players' mind, is associated with home runs because that's what they hear on TV. And so explaining to them, hey, the actual launch angles we want are these line drives between 10 and 22. If you happen to be big and strong and you can hit a ball 90 miles an hour at a 32-degree launch angle and it goes 400 feet, by all means, have at it. But how many of us can really do that at the amateur level? So that's the extent of launch angle for me, 10 to 22.
It seems to me it's an overcorrection from the 70s, 80s, and 90s when it was like, keep the ball out of the air was the message. Hey, keep the ball out of the air was just driven into all of us. I think there was that kind of overcorrection when people started finding out that hitting the ball in the air could be more productive. They overcorrected and just kept going past that 10 to 22 launch angle, degree launch angle that you mentioned, right? They just said, well, if a higher launch angle is better, then more must be better. And of course, it's not. So I think it was an overcorrection. Back to what you said about the down and behind. I love how you use the word behind. And I say that because I think it really is something that you can almost feel with you're thinking it, and you can feel it with your hands, even without a bat in your hands. And being behind the ball, you didn't say down and under, you didn't say down and on top. You say down and behind. And when I think behind, and I think most listeners probably hear this, kids behind, they think squaring up the ball behind the pitch, meaning, like you said, be on plane, which will, if done right, will be 10 to 22 degrees pretty consistently, right?
Yeah. Make it make sense, So yeah, it all leads into one thing or another. And I laugh about it now just because I've been doing it so long. It doesn't faze me. It's just another day in the life. But I find it funny when people are like, you teach an uppercut swing, you teach a launch angle swing. No, I don't. I teach line drives, and I've taught line drives since I started coaching. Those swings just may look a little bit different for each individual player, but that's where I have the fun with the online stuff, when people start yapping and actually have no idea. So, yeah, man.
Makes me think of that man in the arena quote, right? Unless you're in the arena and you've done it 1,000 hours, let's be a little more curious. Yeah. Afraid of being hit by a pitch. Get a lot of kids at the youth game afraid of getting hit by the pitch. What's your take on that?
Man, I tell you what, this just comes from me growing up playing the game a long time. I think that for some kids, just mentally, they can handle it and understand that it's part of the game. And I think some kids, they're scared. And it's a mental hurdle, and it's not something to make fun of. It's not like they're trying to be scared, but getting hit with something hard hurts. And for if you aren't kind of born with, whether it be a baseball mentality or kind of a high level competitive mentality, that can be a really hard hurdle to get over. And, parents ask me all the time, and it's one of those where I'm like, hey, man, if I had that magic fairy dust, I'd own an island somewhere. I don't have an answer for that for every player. We can talk about learning to get hit, learning to turn properly instead of opening yourself up. We can talk about mentality. Like, do you really think the pitcher's trying to hit you? No, right? Especially at the young levels, they're not trying to hit you. You can talk about the probabilities. How many at bats have you gotten in your life? Talk to a 10-year-old. Hey, how many times do you think you've gone to the plate in a game in your life? And they're like doing the math. And I was like, you know what? Let's just say 300 in your lifetime. How many times have you gotten hit? And they're like, two. And I'm like, okay, so two out of 300. And, maybe they can process it that way. But ultimately, they just either grow out of it or they don't. That's the reality. Some kids mentally just aren't built to be hitters, whether that's fear of failure, whether that's fear of getting hit, whether that's they're too much of a perfectionist, whatever it is. They either grow out of it over time, and mom and dad and coaches just need to be patient, or by the time they're 13, they say, peace out, I'm going to go find something else to do. So, yeah, I wish I did have an easier or a fix for that. But I think some kids are just born with that, oh, you're going to hit me, I'm going to get mad and figure it out. And some are just a little more, ouch, that hurts. And I don't want that to happen again. I'm going to self-preservate here and I'm not going to get hit. I'm going to move. So, yeah, that's a tough one, man. And I feel for kids that struggle with it because I didn't. Like, I remember vividly getting hit in the face when I was 9 years old. It was actually on a machine. We had those old, hard machine balls, and it was early in the morning, and the dew had gotten on them. And I'm sitting there expecting it to come right down the middle, and I didn't even flinch. I mean, it just, bam, hit me in the face, black eye. Next day, get up, like nothing happened, hit a home run. But I've been playing wiffle ball in the backyard, and I've been playing with my buddies since we could run around and throw. So getting hit to me was just part of the game. Nowadays, kids aren't doing that, and so it's not part of the game. It's something like, oh, crap, I just got hit. That hurts. So just experience and mentality.
I like how you broke down the percentages for those kids that are afraid. Just, you try different things with different kids that are afraid. And you said, hey, two out of 300 times you've been hit out of 300 at bats, and that's less than 1%. So less than 1% of the time you get in there, and you're going to get hit a lot of times where it just bounces off, it deflects off, and it's not going to do, it's not going to hit you right in the cheek. So I like how you shared that, because any information that like that can really put it into context and help reduce that anxiety. I'll tell you what, Josh, thank you so much for coming on. I'd love to have you come back on maybe later in the season, have you share out a couple other things. I know we were going to talk a little bit about or weighted bats, maybe private lessons, do's and don'ts. You give tons of private lessons, but I think right here was a ton of great stuff. Plus all the listeners, head over YouTube channel, Instagram for Josh, Hitting Done Right. I appreciate you coming on, Josh.
Hey, man, I really do appreciate it. Anytime. I love doing these. I think the reach is good. I think the different audiences are good. Obviously, it's good for me because it gets my name out there a little bit more. But it's for the kids and for the parents and for anybody that does listen. Feel free to reach out online. One of the things that I pride myself on is getting back to everybody that has genuine, valid questions. Feel free to send me short videos of your players. I have no problem looking at those really quick and saying, hey, you may want to think about this, or go look at this video on my YouTube. So, yeah, I really appreciate it, man.
All right, that wraps up our interview with Coach Cathcart. Good listen right there. I hope to bring Josh back on sometime soon. I really think there's a lot of reason to believe that his coaching foundation, coming from those first principles and reasoning and trying to make sense of it, common sense, I think he's really on to some good stuff. Love to bring him back on. And when I hear a coach talk like he does, that to me is a green flag. A lot of red flags out there. I come across a lot of red flags, but with Josh there, Coach Cathcart, a lot of green flags. Go over and check out his stuff. YouTube would be a good place to start. Hitting Done Right on YouTube, and then Instagram and his website, hittingdoneright.com. He does hitting analysis. Speaking of hitting analysis, I am a pitching coach by trade. I started as a pitching coach 23 years ago. I've coached thousands and thousands of pitchers from 6U all the way up to major league pitchers. I've analyzed thousands and thousands of deliveries, pitching deliveries. And if you are interested, I'm considering doing some limited remote video analysis, pitching analysis. I've been doing this over the last couple of years for buddies of mine, guys I used to play with, former teammates that have gone on to coaching. Typically they're hitting coaches or they haven't been coaching pitchers as long. And so they'll reach out and say, hey, can you help me break this down, this pitching delivery, give me some tips. Can you analyze it? And I'll get it up on the 75-inch touchscreen, break it down, analyze it, feedback, solutions, a training plan. And I'm considering this option because I know there's a lot of concern about keeping pitchers healthy, getting pitchers' deliveries right. It's a very difficult thing to coach because it happens so fast. You can take the coaching plan at 80/20 Baseball. By the way, the coaching plan, use the promo code Great Coaching. One word, Great Coaching, 10% off during March. There's only a couple times all year it's on a discount. Great Coaching is the promo code. You can take that coaching plan and implement it right away because when you're using something like the coaching plan, you can get really good really fast. Coaching pitching, because it happens so fast, the pitching delivery, the meat and potatoes of it lasts a second or less, just like the hitting swing. So it's hard to see and hard to really see how it all connects. And I know we want to keep pitchers' arms healthy, throw more strikes. So I'm throwing this out. If you're interested, email me, coachbo@8020baseball.com. Now here's the thing. My time's pretty tight. This will be done on a limited basis, first come, first serve. And I'm going to do it as a group analysis. So a minimum of 4 players. So if you have 2 kids or 1 kid plus some teammates, and of course, the more kids, the better the rate I can give, because just setting it all up and getting it going is half the battle when doing this pitching analysis stuff. So email me, coachbo@8020baseball.com if you're interested. This would be a great thing for so many of you that just don't live near a handful of great pitching coaches or even a pitching coach at all. In Southern California, there was a lot of pitching coaches, and there was even a handful of really good pitching coaches, but where a lot of you live, that's hard to come by. And second, this video analysis will be done with game footage. So you don't even have to take any time to go to a pitching coach. It adds very limited time to your schedule as parents. You get the video from the game and send it my way and get the analysis back your way with feedback. And I got some bonus stuff to throw in there. So again, this is going to be a minimum of 4 players. Email me, coachbo@8020baseball.com or through the contact page at 8020baseball.com. All right, next week, we got some good stuff to talk about, very useful things, including the top 5 X coaching posts of the month and 2 other things that are going to be super helpful to elevate our coaching game and our players' game. Go check out Hitting Done Right, 80/20 Baseball, the coaching plan, the promo Great Coaching. There won't be another discount on this for at least 6 months. So use that promo code Great Coaching at 8020baseball.com, and then email me if you're interested in getting professional video analysis done of your players, your pitchers. All right, everyone, until next week, let's keep taking care of our health so we can be at our best for our families, close friends, and our players. Let's take this information out there. Let's put it into play. Y'all take care. Until next week, adios.
This has been the 80/20 Baseball Podcast, the 80/20 Baseball Masterclass. We got this. Now, let's take the field.